Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the anatomy of a scam, specifically looking at the psychology behind modern frauds. We're going to completely deconstruct the psychological manipulation used by these so-called spiritual fraudsters, using figures like Bapa Jani as our prime example. Seriously, guys, this is literally a masterclass in manipulation. And knowing exactly how these people hijack human emotions, well, that's step one to seeing right through it. So, that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Why do we fall for spiritual frauds? It's super easy to look from the outside and just wonder, how on earth could anyone be taken in by this? But looking at the source material, it highlights a really dark reality. Whenever religion or faith or just raw human emotions are weaponized to fool people, the results are absolutely devastating. These scammers, they aren't just after your wallet. No, they want your trust. They want your faith and your total devotion. And when those deeply personal things get manipulated for deceit, it just leaves a trail of pure destruction. This isn't just financial fraud. It is a full-on emotional and psychological hijacking. Okay, let's dive into this core deception. Every single successful fraud relies on a really good mask. On the surface, the outward motive they present to the world is always this idea of spiritual welfare. It's pitched as this selfless desire to serve the community, right? But the actual psychological motive underneath it all, it's completely different. It's all about wealth and empire. These characters are experts at hiding their true intentions. They exploit the simple-hearted, taking total advantage of their good nature, just to systematically build these massive personal empires. That huge gap between what they say and what they actually want, that's the foundational lie of the whole shebang. Which brings us to phase one of their playbook. Small beginnings, big lies. You see, every massive scam starts out pretty obscure. The journey usually begins in a very small, incredibly unassuming way. They quietly weave themselves into a community, planting these little seeds of deception before anyone even realizes what's hit them. And make no mistake, this is not random. It's a highly structured grooming process. Step one, they present themselves as just ordinary, relatable people who show immense but totally fake sympathy for everyone's struggles. They listen, they nod, they act like your best friend. Then, step two. Once they've built up that baseline of trust, they start spreading these fabricated miracles. Just drip by drip, rumors of their supposed spiritual powers start circulating. And finally, step three, the trap just snaps shut. The followers, totally convinced by the fake sympathy and the wild stories, accept these fraudsters as their absolute guides, basically handing over all their critical thinking. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they completely redefine these so-called miracles to fit the scam. We are definitely not talking about genuine faith here. As our sources explicitly point out, these are stories completely divorced from reality. I mean, they are completely manufactured events, either carefully staged or just made up entirely by the fraudster's inner circle. The whole point? Pure showmanship. It acts as this powerful psychological tool to build an unassailable, totally false persona. If you can convince people you have literal supernatural abilities, you instantly elevate yourself above any kind of questioning. It makes the psychological trap almost impossible to escape. And once that persona is locked in, we move right into phase two, targeting human vulnerabilities. I actually want you to just reflect on your own life for a second. We all have those moments where we feel totally lost or desperate, right? Well, these cons only work because they precisely target those exact moments. The truly unsettling reality is that these scammers aren't going after the strong or the secure. No, they're out there scanning the crowd for the desperate, the broken, the fearful. Our text points out three main targets here: illness, financial struggles, and really severe personal issues. I mean, just think about how devastating it is when you or someone you love is incurably sick, or when you literally don't know how you're going to buy groceries next week. In those moments of intense desperation, people will try anything. They'll believe anyone. These fraudsters absolutely prey on the sick and the poor, promising these miraculous cures or sudden wealth just to gain total emotional leverage over their victims. It is just a very calculated exploitation of human suffering. Once they have that leverage on a large enough scale, the whole thing shifts gears. Welcome to phase three, the propaganda empire. At this point, the operation completely transforms. It goes from a small circle of manipulated folks into a massive, heavily controlled network. Fueled by all the wealth they've extracted and the fame they've manufactured, these figures outgrow those humble beginnings and become systemic controllers. So how do they keep this massive empire running?
The source material breaks down three main tools: propaganda, social media, and blind followers. They completely weaponize social media platforms to broadcast these fake miracles all over the world, constantly feeding that propaganda machine. But honestly, their most powerful tool? It's the blind devotion of their followers. Figures like Bapa Jani literally hijack millions of minds, creating this massive army of people who will fiercely defend them. It lets the scammer assert absolute, iron grip control over the narrative and their entire empire.
But what happens when someone finally sees through the smoke and mirrors? Well, the source material gives us a pretty chilling answer, summed up perfectly in this quote. They use their massive groups to crush dissent and silence anyone who exposes their lies. That right there is the ultimate defense mechanism of this empire. They build a powerful, impenetrable echo chamber. If a whistleblower steps up or a victim tries to speak out, the fraudster literally just points their army of blind followers right at them. They aggressively suppress the truth, they intimidate critics, and they punish anyone who dares to expose the deception. That very same community that was promised spiritual welfare, it just gets used as a weapon to protect the leader's bank account. Which brings us to the inevitable conclusion laid out in our sources, the destructive reality. History, and honestly, even just watching the news today, proves one undeniable truth over and over again. Whenever someone decides to turn faith or religion or deep spiritual belief into a business, it doesn't matter where they started or how humble they seemed at first. It always, inevitably, ends in total fraud and profound ruin for everyday people. The facade always cracks eventually, but not before doing immense psychological, financial, and emotional damage to folks who just wanted something real to believe in.
So I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on today. How can we actually protect our own emotions and deeply held beliefs from being hijacked like this? Really understanding the anatomy of these scams, from that initial fake sympathy all the way to the manufactured miracles and the weaponization of our vulnerabilities, that is our absolute strongest defense. By staying super vigilant and always questioning the motives of anyone demanding our blind faith, we can protect ourselves and our communities. So keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.